Well, we have a fourth Pachachka this evening. Maile Lono-Batura is the Director of Sustainable Biosolids Program at the Water Environment Federation. She's board certified as environmental scientist. Her specialty is sustainable science. Maile, we're really excited to have you here for your Pachachka. And I love this. It's like right to the point, right? A voice for biosolids. So the stage is yours.
Thanks so much, Dan. And thank you everybody for allowing the stage for the 40 under 40 and presenting today. I wanted to share a story about a somewhat elusive, underground, underrepresented resource that we all contribute to. But I thought I'd start out with why I chose to lift the lid and serve as a voice for biosolids. So my formative years were spent in Seattle at the height of the grunge era. I was more focused on my next concert versus academics. Until a guest speaker in my biology class came in and hit a chord I hadn't heard before. Your poo helps sustain working forests, fund school programs. And right then I was in. I wanted to know more. And he showed this tree ring. So the grand challenge really was polluted waters, or really resources in the wrong places. Unswimmable lakes like this one, Lake Washington in the Seattle area. Imagine going to your favorite swimming hole to see warning signs that it's unsafe to swim. And these kids are just waiting, just wanting to swim and have fun, but they can't because it's polluted. The river's on fire. 1969, the Cuyahoga River fire in Cleveland, Ohio became a poster child of water pollution and prompted the environmental movement that we know today. The 1970s were really, really a big part of that environmental movement. Enter the Clean Water Act in the 1970s. We saw major bipartisan legislation to protect our environment. It was the formation of the EPA happened, the first Earth Day happened, the Clean Water Act, of which the National Biosolids Part 503 regulations were born that required biennial reviews that were part of the Clean Water Act as well. Brought on the League of Extraordinary Scientists. I love this movie, by the way. But these universities across the country came in and are known as the W4170 committee to study beneficial use and the impact on soil ecosystem and human health. So looking at residuals and reclaimed water. They developed risk-based regulations that are rooted in research and public review. And this continuous transparent program review were the pillars that continue to this day. Entered the pollution control centers, or that's what they used to be called, that were brought online to catalyze nature's own recipe for managing resources, our modern day resource recovery centers. And from these centers, we can recover resources. It's wild and cool and awesome. Clean water, biosolids, biogas. Each of these have unique characteristics, qualities, and end uses that we all have on tap, literally everywhere. And what we know is that the research has demonstrated crop yields with biosolids were matched or increased compared to non-renewable or synthetic fertilizer. Supplements organic matter in our soils to support them, support healthy soils, offers affordable alternative for farming communities and captures carbon in the soil, taking it out of the atmosphere. We also see that in research has found that we recover valuable heat and renewable energy. This is a closed loop resource, not harvesting limited natural resources, and it helps retain water to reduce soil erosion, in turn holding water where plants really, really need it. What we also know is that pollution persists and in new forms. Waterways still see pollution. You can still find those not so flushable wipes on the shelf. And then you add in non-stick chemicals like PFAS, you add in antibiotics. These create new challenges for the resource recovery centers that were not built for those. Continued research is necessary. What we also know is we suffer from our, what I like to call our own chemical romance of convenient and convenience lifestyle. Stain guard, if you have kids, you want that. Waterproof gear, I live in Seattle, I want that. Food packaging, it's nice to have things not stick. And non-stick pans, kind of essential, especially if you can't cook like myself. But also there's this biosolids is unique. It's further complicated by the flush narratives. So internally, we still say dispose in this sector. We want to be under the radar and kind of fly away from what the media might see. And they even have rules not to use brown in marketing materials. Externally, there's a visceral reaction. Biosolids are very unique in that as a recovered resource. Yuck, not in my backyard. It's very visible compared to the reclaimed water and energy recovered resources. And there's a vast history. There's 40 plus years of research and practice in the US. We want to meet this with a unique approach, focusing on broadening awareness of the role we all play, target future workforce of climate change and innovation leaders, and open dialogue with humor, with intrigue, and the faces of resource recovery. This is something that we're challenging ourselves with right now. And what we're seeing is it's happening already. We're not the first ones to do this. Ocean Sewage Alliance just released a campaign where they're trying to re-potty train the world. There's headlines out there. Turd photo opportunities in downtown New York City. Also on the East River in New York, celebrating 2/22/22 was a floater supported by Charmin. But there's also these other ways to do it. We want to flip the script. So changing the way how we speak about this, make it relatable, humorous. You may see these fun fecal facts and say, hey, that's a huge giant fatberg in London. We're really saying quit flushing wipes in Greece, get personal. We're really saying, hey, by the way, you contribute to the 5.8 dry tons annually in the US. And WEF is really trying to focus on flusher engagement. How can we have these fun fecal facts and Friday flushes to bring people into the story and show them how this is part of everyday conveniences affecting all of our food prints. We also released a Biosolids special feature on PBS Viewpoint that takes viewers on a short journey of the power beyond the flush. This is really what I see as a new opportunity. Let's learn from our experience. Let's be more proactive, be poised. We're really in this position to tell the story and how it plays a critical role in realizing a circular resource economy. Let's make it personal and make it fun. We all play a role in this nutrient recycling story. What I want you all to leave with is knowing that each flush you contribute every day is a reminder that we all play a role. First step is owning that, and the future possibilities will follow. Thank you, and hug a turd.
That's fantastic.
You said it's fun, right?
It's supposed to be fun. Oh, that is fantastic. I love that. I love that. Well, I mean, I watched it and I thought, okay, so, like Seattle, when I'm teaching my own students, I always show them the kind of like, the person in flannel holding a little, evergreen
Very
fruit.
real.
I'm like, yeah, it's very real, right? Like that's environment. And I guess one of the questions that, it's kind of, I love the passion. You're like, it's like a Dr. Seuss. You're going to speak for the poo, right? So
right.
So you're out here, and I love that, right? So one of the questions that that I'm really trying to get my mind around is this kind of like human-centered view of some of this stuff versus humans as part of nature, right? I mean, so you're talking about like biosolids, right? So I mean, everybody poops, right? So it's got to go somewhere. It's all going to be recycled back around, and we can get these good uses for it. But now we've kind of messed it up with this, like PFAS and antibiotics and all this stuff, right? So speak to maybe a little bit of that kind of like dynamic, right? I mean, if we obsess on everything that has a human health consequence, we're never going to use it's like we're never going to recycle or reuse anything for anything, right? Because we're going to be constantly worried about us. So how do you balance that dynamic there?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and this one comes up a lot. I think the easiest way to explain it is PFAS is a story, but it's not Biosolids' story, right? It's the Eddie Haskell in our story. Mm-hmm. And because they're very slick, they're very commercially desirable for product manufacturing. I get it, but it's not the Biosolids story, and they're not born in the resource recovery centers. So I think that's really critical in talking about these pollutants and how we're addressing them. The other part of that is the eye has always kind of been fixed on biosolids because of what it is and where it comes from, which has kind of been a blessing in disguise in a way, because we have had to stick to strict regulations. Research is something that's continuous, and that we always root everything in. So I think that it's not been a bad thing to have such a critical eye on biosolids, to make sure that we continually make sure that the quality is top notch, but bringing people and that human part into it is to let people know You are the producers. These resource recovery centers are really the refineries. This is not something they're just making out of thin air. They're making it from us.
Sure.
And so how do we work in concert with them?
And so how do you find, kind of when you leverage that, right? I mean, it's this, age-old story, right? Where we all come out of the era of sanitation, and people lived in these dense cities like London and New York and Philadelphia, and they overcame the assimilative capacity. And Biosolids is this great story about how do we solve some of that issue, but then also get it back to this, this kind of natural process, right? Like humans are part of nature as opposed to separate from nature. So as you kind of stare into the crystal ball and you're looking ahead, what are some of the next things? Because I mean, certainly you think the water reuse, you're kind of like, okay, Southern California and dealing with issues of water. And so we kind of can see the over the horizon and how much money they're going to need to spend, the technology, and overcoming that yuck factor of do I really, right? So where's that future in biosolids if you were going to look into a crystal ball?
So this is, of course, I'm biased. But if I was to look into a crystal ball, I would, and this is what I say to my kids. I say, get really used to knowing what happens in every part of this cycle. Because when you have water shortages, when you have drought, when you have climate issues that we see every day, renewable energy is such an incredible thing that we should be tapping into everywhere that we can. So how do we really be part of that and really become more comfortable with it? Because I think it's something that this is happening. It's happening in real time. And we really need to own that and be a part of it versus shooing it away and thinking that it's not something that's happening. Let's just own that and really make that an integral part of how we can make a circular resource economy.
Fantastic. Well, Maile, thank you so much. Wonderful, Pachachka. Really appreciated that.